just trying to find one that I understand more. But these are like kind of poetic too, or morality, prophecies, souvenir, mortality, prophecies, souvenir. I gotta look up a few of these words. I gotta be honest. Assumption.
I love that because if I weren't, I don't want to speak too much about myself, right? But if I weren't a social worker, if that wasn't my professional background, I definitely would have been a master's in writing. I just did not take that road. I love lyrics. I love matching up words to get to their point. You know, when I'm doing my postings in the morning and I'm on WordPress and I don't want to give the whole quote away, I'm paraphrasing because I want the book to sell. So I'm paraphrasing and I'm finding 5-10 different ways to say the same thing without taking away the message. And then I find myself looking at syllables. Well, how many beats does this one have? It gets kind of musical in my head. And then I'm like, let's get the thesaurus, because then they're going to give me different ways to say the same thing. So a lot of those trying to understand something is because I like the thesaurus.
Yeah, it's amazing that language
Yeah.
has so many different ways to say the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just really exploring all the different ways to bring your point across. Because most people, we kind of stick to like a basic way of saying our point. But why do that if there's, you know, you can with all the different, like you said, like if you look at a thesaurus or dictionary, there's so many ways that you can express yourself. But we you know, throughout life, most of us, including me, you know, don't really dive into it. You know, we don't really, because a lot of these words I don't know.
Well, give me an example and we'll vibe on it, because you might want to know it to get the full expression of the quote. By the way, my name is James.
Oh, I'm Baron.
Baron?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Baron.
Nice meeting you.
We done got into it. We didn't even exchange names.
Assumption, conceives, concoction, originating, guess, suppose.
Is there a word in that one that you don't know?
Well, this one I know all of the words, but you're also really good at, you know, putting things together at a more advanced level. So it's I'm still not capturing exactly, but it says assumption, conceives, concoction, originating a guess, to suppose, outlining arrangements, to plot, scheming a plan. And then under contemplative actually, I don't know exactly what this word means. Subservience.
Subservience
I've heard of it before.
is to be subservient, to be a servant that's below, Trump, for example, looks at people who are, his lackeys behave subserviently.
I see what you mean.
Like he's this hierarchy,
Yeah.
and they're the lowlies. Read that one again, the first line, please.
It says, assumption conceives concoction, originating a guess to suppose outlining arrangements to plot scheming a plan.
What does that sound like? Because it's very simple to me, and I know that I was having fun playing with those words.
Assumption conceives concoction, originating a guess. So, conceives concoction, originating a guess to suppose outlining arrangements. So, is it saying like, assumptions make or conceives concoction? So assumptions kind of start to make a guess to suppose outlining arrangements. So assumptions can kind of make a scheme, like, or a plan to scheme on somebody or a thing or whatever the subject is.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what it's like, the road of what assumptions do. Right? You assume and then you do all those other parts, and they all mean the same thing. But it's up to the person who's doing that assumption. Read the second line, please.
Contemplative subservience. Is the second line kind of like a theme or like a more
you can look at it like
precise way of...
Exactly. I'll say precise.
Contemplative subservience.
So when you think of contemplative subservience and the assumptions, what does that mean to you in those 4 ways? If you could give contemplative thinking subservience, like you are just, whatever it means to you, contemplative, you have to use subservience, making your own example. But contemplative subservience, what is that to you?
Like, when you're trying to think about I guess another thing is, I'm not sure if we're talking about like people or things. I'm guessing people.
It's your description. I'm not talking about any particular noun, person, place, or thing. I've just given a design of communication, language. So when the reader reads it, is the reader taking that and making it personal?
Yeah.
So when you make it personal, think about yourself. When have you been, read that second line again?
Contemplative subservience.
When have you been subservient to your contemplation? Are there times where maybe you overthought and gave yourself a headache? Or were there times where that subservience was necessary. Because there could have been times in your life when you were like, I don't feel like thinking about this. And you kept pushing it away, and then it's like you need to be subservient to this thought now. So it can be positive, it could be negative, the yin yang is there. But for you to just relate to it. How you doing?
Hi.
All right. Personally, in your own effect or your own experiences, that's where the example comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you ever thought of yourself being subservient to your contemplation? And was it a positive or a negative? Or had it played one day positive and played one day negative?
Yeah, I think I've been that way multiple times, but the ones that come to mind are more negative.
May you give an example?
Let me see if I can choose one that doesn't embarrass me too much. I guess I'll choose this one because everyone kind of goes through this, but I went through like a breakup many years ago, 6-7 years ago, and yeah, I was kind of in a negative way subservient to my contemplation.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts were just thinking about this thought about she was wrong, was I wrong, what happened, so I was kind of subservient to those thoughts, and it negatively impacted me. I just kept thinking about that over and over again. Sometimes you can't come to a conclusion of why something happened, then it's at that point it's better off for you to not be subservient to that thought, because then
In that situation, how did that subservience in its negative, because that's what you're using now, using that side, how did it affect you? And here's where I come in with the different facets of our makeup: spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So what did you go through with that contemplation negatively? How did you feel it physically? How did it show up physically?
So I think immediately after the breakup, I think I felt all four of those categories: spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. And physically, felt like my blood was boiling almost inside of my body. It was actually the first time I felt anxiety. So before that moment, I never really felt anxiety. I was always an athlete, so I was and I was always I always had my mom and my family. When things go wrong, they always had my back. So emotionally, I was always pretty much under control. But in that moment, physically, my blood was really boiling. I felt anxiety. I never felt that feeling before.
The emotion was anxiety.
Oh yeah, the emotion. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So emotionally, I had anxiety. Physically, my blood was boiling. I was kind of sweating. I started pacing back and forth.
That's the physical right there.
Yeah.
Did you experience any physical damage? Because some people hurt themselves. Some people will binge drink. Some people will not eat or eat too much. Besides feeling that physicality of the stress from the panic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you do anything physically to hurt yourself?
No.
Okay. Good.
I thought about it.
Uh-huh.
That was a problem for a while, because I think this is what I came to. I don't know how true this is for everyone, but I did feel that way, like hurting myself, and I think it's like when anxiety and depression come together, you start to maybe feel like hurting yourself. So yeah, but in that moment when we broke up, I didn't feel depression yet. felt anxiety. After a while, I also started to, form depression as well. And I had both of them at the same time, and then I think that's when I started feeling like, those thoughts of like hurting myself came up, and yeah, they would haunt me. And I think that's where the spiritually comes in. Spiritually, I started to, sometimes I felt like I wasn't in control of myself, and spiritually I was, I guess, disconnected or negative, or I don't know exactly how to describe it, but spiritually I was, I wasn't aware of that spiritual side before, but once it impacted me so much, I started to become aware. I started to notice, and I noticed that something was wrong. So.
Oh. Could you say that even though the experience had a lot of pain, that being introduced to your spirituality, do you look at that as a benefit?
Yeah.
Can you describe how that benefit looks?
Well, people like you mentioned earlier, some religious, some not religious, some spiritual. So I'm not trying to throw my beliefs on anybody, but you're asking how, to describe it. So for me, I didn't really think about spirituality before, or connecting, and I began to, in those times, I started believing in a creator of the universe. I started believing in, some people call it God, different names. I started looking around me and seeing everything. I started thinking, everything was really created with a purpose. And, I kind of saw my purpose too.